I totally acknowledge like he could finish as the RB1 overall.
Sure as hell it looks like Leonard Fournette is going to be the leader. Follow that money. Just 12 running backs right now have a contract worth at least $20 million. Sorry, Cowboys fans. Zeke Elliott's still number one at $90 million. After that, we got Kamara, McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, and the two new members of the club, James Conner and Leonard Fournette. Obviously, a bit of a gap between 21 and 90 million. But look, all of these backs we're talking about are featured backs that are really the workhorses of their offense. I would not expect that to be any different for Leonard Fournette this year. Why would it be? Listen, don't take my word for it. Listen to Byron freaking Leftwich, the play caller. This was a quote from him earlier this offseason. Why it's tough to get Lenny off the field. He's a 3-down back. He's a smart guy, and he and Tom can play ball. They can play ball together, and when it starts moving on them and things are changing and things have to happen, Lenny and him can play ball. They've been in these situations. That's why it's hard to really get him off the field because of what he brings and the connection him and Tom have. I think it's unique. It's not that we're forcing him on that field. It's because he's the best in what we're asking him to do. We're looking at the reigning RB4 in PPR points per game, the reigning RB4 in expected PPR points per game. Only Christian freaking McCaffrey had more receptions per game last year than Leonard Fournette. Like, yeah, it sucks that Fournette got hurt at the end of the season with that hamstring issue. But Dwain, what is the red flag with Fournette other than him not being like the most elite talent? Because the workload, the offense, like I'm imagining your Christmas tree right now. It's not going to be red where we're talking about his talent. Maybe it's like yellow, but everything else is green, man.
Yeah, I mean that's it. Talent, like he's basically at replacement level, But,
Sure.
but that's just looking at yards after contact. That's looking at explosive rush rate, which is 10+ yards. That's looking at missed tackles forced. But at the end of the day, when you're just looking at can he pile up yardage, we've already seen the answer to that. In this offense, he still has the former first round draft capital, high first round pick. He obviously just got paid, which matters even more than that. And what Leftwich said, like we saw that come to fruition last year. Fournette just eventually just took over the entire backfield, including the passing down work. So I know there's some concern with folks. We'll talk about Rachaad White, in a second, that he could start to peck away at some of the receiving duties. And I think that's possible. But I think with Fournette, even when you look at it, like let's say he ends up being a 60 to 65% snap type player in this offense and not, a 70 or 80% like what we saw for stretches last year whenever some of the other guys were hurt, you're still going to get, an RB1. Like he's still going to be an RB1 even in that scenario. And if for some reason, say Rachaad White's not ready for prime time, which happens a lot with Brady, where we bring these guys in, if he can't do his job, if he can't pick up, pass protection, all those sort of things, like Brady's not going to have him out there. Right. And so that's in the range of outcomes. And if that happens and Fournette's out there 75 to 80% of the time in this offense, like he could be the number one running back overall. You mentioned he was already number 4 in points per game last season. So, I mean, it's just it's tough to find a way to push Fournette down the board. Like I try to be careful with him because he is, he kind of in one way he fits the dead zone profile just because he's not much better than really any other back on some of these underlying metrics. But look, the team loves him. Tom Brady loves him. He's still well under the 1,500 carry threshold that we care about. He'll be 27.7 years old this year. So I mean, he's getting up there. But I think he's still good to at least have one more year. I think at this time next year, our conversation could change a little bit, right? Because we'll be going into almost his age 29 season. He'll be close to that 1,500 touch mark, and we'll have to see what his peripherals look like at that point. But for this year, I mean, look, we've talked about Fournette so much on this podcast. Like, we were spoiled. We were getting him in the 4th round. Now he's a second-round pick. He's a mid-second. He's a mid-second round pick now.
He has room for, like, okay, if that 60, 65% snap scenario comes to fruition, like he had 249 touches last year. He only scored 10 touchdowns. I mean, that's good, but would we be that shocked if the workhorse running back...
He easily scored 15 in this.
Hell, 20. Eckler had 20 touchdowns last year on 26 more touches. And, Eckler really outperformed that. And Eckler's, I think, better than Fournette, so that's fine. But really, even if Rachaad White gets some of that pass down work, which I would not say is a certainty at all, Fournette as the primary running back in the league's reigning number 2 ranked scoring offense, impossible to get off. He is my RB6. The only guys I'm taking ahead, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, and Austin Eckler. And yeah, Dwain, I'm pulling that trigger on him almost every single time in the mid to late stages of round 2. You do have him a few spots lower, correct?
Yeah, I have him a few spots lower, but like I'm still getting him where I have him. You're going to get him plenty, still at ADP.
Yeah.
I don't have him as quite as high as you, but I still have him right at like my top 10. So, and I love him. Like I totally acknowledge like he could finish as the RB1 overall as well. So, I'm also just trying to keep folks from like getting way overexcited about him. Like, don't take him in your first round. You don't have to take him in the early second, right? If you want. Like, doesn't mean you don't take him unless he's right at ADP. I'm fine taking Fournette in the early second round because of the potential for that every down role in this very specific offense. I think that just gives him so much upside that keeps him in that range for me. Whereas like, some of these other guys that we've seen in the past that, we're just projecting really big volume for them. Like they're not always on a team that is as elite, right, as what we see with the Buccaneers. And so that gives him some immense upside.